Welcome to the Artella Podcast, where we learn from and share perspectives from other creatives all over the world. Today's podcast is with Spyros Tsiounis, the creator behind the distributed animated film Them Greeks. Spyros has numerous film and TV credits as a story artist, working at such studios as DreamWorks and Lucasfilm. I'm excited to talk to him today about his short film and the passion that has led him to push forward a new approach to creating high-end animated projects with others all around the world. So I thought it would be great to kind of start with Them Greeks and kind of talk about this project that you've been doing, how long you've been doing it, and a little bit about the history, just so we can kind of get an overview of what you've been doing.
Sure. So the summary is that we started Them Greeks about at the beginning of 2010, approximately. And at the same time, I was working at Lucasfilm, and we managed to pull a team together. We're still in the middle of the production. By now, we after a lot of after many near-death experiences, to be honest, they're important stories to tell. And by now we've I think we've accomplished about 70% of the animation, and we're starting to render final shots, which means that all stages of the production are active, which is an important validation, and I can talk about that a little more as well.
Yeah.
But that's the very rough summary.
So you've been working on it for about 5 years. Almost.
Yes.
5 years in total, and you're about 70% done with animation. You're starting to render, and you're like, you see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, we're definitely seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, finally. But cool. There is still a lot of work ahead of us.
Okay. And one of the things that is really interesting, and I've noticed this for a long time, and so any of our listeners, they should check out your Facebook page, because you guys have been very open about the production, which is pretty different from normal productions. Most productions hide everything. They want to keep it till the end and then show you a little teaser trailer and then show you the whole thing. But you guys have been really open about the entire process, from concept design to modeling, rigging, animation tests, and even rendering and stuff as well. Do you want to talk about your thought on being more open about it and how it's worked for you?
Right, yes, absolutely. That was a conscious decision. And you're right. We were perfectly aware that most productions like to keep everything a secret until the very end, because I guess they don't want to spoil anything. They want to keep as much of the element of surprise as possible. That makes sense to me more for a for-profit studio production. Mm-hmm. But in our case, I felt that the nature of our project is very different. We are more of a movement. We're trying to we're trying to promote the cause of trying to do these animated films independently, because frankly our resources are limited. We felt that it's much more of a benefit for people to know quite a bit about the project, so that they get excited to join it.
And has it worked pretty well for you? Have you found it easy to find people to work on the project?
Yes and no. It is much easier to find people to work, to collaborate on projects like that than any other time before. I cannot even imagine something like that happening 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
Right.
The internet most definitely allow somebody to promote something like that in a way that casts a much wider net and connect with people from anywhere in the world fairly effortlessly. Having said that, just because this is now a possibility, it doesn't mean that it's not a challenging possibility. Mm-hmm. It's still difficult to find great people. Mm-hmm. To join the team. It does take effort to recruit them and bring them on board.
In doing this project, you wanted to do it online. Was that something that you wanted to do from the beginning versus having a facility or trying to start a small studio or anything like that? I mean, what was your decision point to do this online?
So one thing that I've always been very passionate about has been independent filmmaking. Um, it is, one of the reasons, if not the main reason, why I was inspired and fascinated to get into the movie industry is the whole story of American Zoetrope, if you're familiar with it, which is basically this production company that was put together by these very young filmmakers that had just graduated out of college, and they were the first generation to graduate out of college with a film degree. There was no such thing before that, and the studio system at the time was in trouble, and they were having a hard time being creative the way they saw would be best to be creative in that system. So they ended up moving here to San Francisco to even be geographically separated from that system, and they attempted to build an independent filmmaking scene here, and they went through tremendous difficulties, but almost all of them succeed. Some more spectacularly than others, but almost all of them succeeded in completely innovating movies in the way we know them today, completely rejuvenating the industry at a time when, mind you, a lot of these guys, when they would go to those film departments, their professors were so dismayed by the situation in the movie industry at the time that they would literally tell them to go get their tuition back. There is still time for it. and these are the guys that they didn't go and get their tuition back. They ended up sticking to their passion, and they ended up turning an entire industry around. This is also one of the reasons why I was very excited when I joined Lucasfilm. So why am I saying all that? Why am I giving all this history? Because on the other hand, one of the things that was strange to me about the animation industry is that I joined it at a time in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, when animation was experiencing this huge boom. And there were all sorts of interesting things happening creatively and technologically. And one of those developments that I was hoping for in the future is that surely at some point you will see independent filmmakers get into animation, not just huge studios, and that never really happened. That hasn't really happened. If you think about it, there isn't really such thing as independent animation available to the animation available, lavish animation. I'm not talking about some of the simpler forms of animation. I'm talking about 3D lavish animation. You don't have really any examples of independent filmmaking in that. 5 years ago, a lot of us started looking into how technology is evolving, especially in regards to collaboration tools over the internet. And in that, we saw the potential of independent filmmaking finally coming to the industry. So that was extremely exciting to me. And we were fortunate enough to pull together enough resources and get the ball rolling in that direction by making the short film and just demonstrating hopefully that something like that is now at least possible. And yeah, the rest is history.
Did you know what you were getting yourself into when you started to take this on?
No, I did not. I thought I did, but I did not. And that's one thing that I should caution people about. I used to think that I didn't get into this effort in a naive way in fact, I remember when the first few core people came together, I remember telling them, I expect this to be very difficult. I expect this to be painful. I'm preparing for it as best as I can, psychologically, financially, in terms of studying some of the aspects that we're going to be confronted with. And the amount of adversity that ended up actually transpiring was, I'm not exaggerating, maybe 100 times worse than my most pessimistic estimates.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very, very, very important point. The few animation studios that are capable of, there's a reason why there's only a handful of large studios that are capable of making those lavish 3D animated films. They are extremely complicated. Extremely complicated.
Mm-hmm.
they are this this very difficult marriage of great creativity and computer science and great management, all intertwined. So if anybody were to do an animated film, even within a facility the traditional way, it would be extremely difficult, a very complicated thing. It gets even more complicated if you're trying to do it on a volunteer basis with limited resources, and it gets even more complicated than that if you're trying to set it up entirely over the cloud, which doesn't have much of a precedent. And you have to figure out so many technical problems that most filmmakers haven't dealt with before.
You find talent, and you said, some works out better than others, and I was wondering if you have any tips to people who are doing distributed projects when they are looking for talent. What are some of the things that you found that work and that don't work?
There is one aspect to recruiting talent for this production, which is exactly the same as any other production, any traditional production, and that is that of course it would be great if you can see somebody's reel, if somebody's interested in joining the project, if you can see their reel and see if they would be ready to work on the show. And then if the reel is great, then we approach that person, that artist, and then the next thing we try to do is to be as honest as possible about what the challenges of the show are. And I mean, it's almost a joke by now, but pretty much the first thing I tell people that are interested in joining the project is that I gotta warn you, this is extremely difficult. It's exciting. I love it, but it's extremely difficult, and it actually surprises people how difficult it is.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what's difficult? I mean, I know
So
there's a lot, but yeah.
Right. So the first thing that is a challenge is the fact that it's being accomplished mostly by volunteers, and by definition, volunteers can only give a very limited amount of time to it, and that makes progress. It not only makes it makes progress very very slow because of the small amount of time that everybody puts in, but it's a challenge also because so many people are basically making micro contributions. There are core people that, and by that I don't mean that there are not people that have made huge contributions, especially the ones that have been with the project for a while now, but there is a part of the team which is much more transitory, and those are smaller contributions. And to assemble those contributions into a cohesive whole is a puzzle. So these would be the two main aspects of recruiting. One is traditional. We look at the work that they've done so far, and the second part is we're trying to prepare them for the fact that they would need to put a consistent amount of time into the project, even though their availability is limited. But they do need to set aside at least about 10 hours a week. And we think that's reasonable. That's about an hour, hour and a half every day. If they can commit to that, then they come on board.
Cool. And how many people are working on the production, or do you think have worked on the production in total?
Right now, there must be slightly over 30 people from all over the world. Over the course of the production, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's probably very high. It's probably in the hundreds.
Well, now I want to talk a little bit about the concept of them Greeks, the part that got you really excited about doing that film. So, like, think back to the epiphany you had about, I'm going to make this short film and it's going to be a lot of fun, you know? Like, what motivated you to tell this story? What's personal about it to you?
Okay, so that was actually an idea that I had when I was in college at Cal Arts, and it was a time when I would spend my winters here in the United States, and during the summer I would get to visit back home. And Them Greeks was just a story that came out of my experiencing the contrast between these very different cultures, the Greek culture and the American culture. And under very different circumstances too, because when I would be here, I would be locked in my cubicle doing assignments day and night, and when I would go home, I would mostly see my friends and have fun. But yeah, that's what the film in essence is about.
Yeah, I don't know too much. I've only seen the little clips I've seen on Facebook, but it definitely looks pretty awesome, and the caliber and quality of the work is pretty high in terms of talent that are working on it. Is it professional talent and non-professional talent?
Mostly non-professional.
Yeah.
Actually, there is quite a bit of professional talent, and usually the professional talent is in some of the leadership roles in the production, but most of the artists are junior professionals or students.
Good to hear that, you know, some of them have made major contributions on it as well, which is cool. And a testament to the leadership I think it takes to do a project like this. Like, you have to keep the team motivated and inspired, and yourself inspired as well. And that's something I want to talk to you about, is you've been doing this project for so long and are still like a bulldozer. You're just going for it, you know what I mean? And you don't see any other way. It's just like you have this kind of mindset, and I was wondering if you could kind of talk about that. Like, how do you stay motivated? How do you stay on the course even though there's lots of challenges along the way?
The quick answer is I don't know. It's something so difficult that I'm figuring out what my motivation limits are as I go. It's not easy. It's a very difficult effort. But I guess the main reason is that I do believe that we live at a time in animation when, on one hand, there is, I think, a serious issue to address, and on the other, there is a serious opportunity to address it. And again, that issue is that right now the industry is, it feels to me, out of balance. There is only a few entities that have the capacity to make these lavish animated films, and on the other hand, there's a lot of talent that is craving to make these films, and not all of it has the opportunity to has a shot at it. And but on the other hand, it is becoming more likely, more possible than ever before for all these people, I think, to take matters more into their own hands. And for independent filmmakers, more independent filmmakers, to be able to take a crack at it. So I do feel very, very passionately about that. I don't know to what extent Them Greeks will make a contribution in that direction. I hope we get to make a great contribution. But in addition to ours, I hope other people keep trying towards that direction, because it feels to me like it does have the potential to bring much more of an equilibrium in the industry, and innovate animation both creatively as well as technologically, which I do think it needs it.
One of the things that's really interesting about your answer is that the thing it seems that motivates you the most is that you're pioneering something new and you're excited about the contribution that that could make to the industry, even in some small way, but just to help motivate and inspire other people to make these types of films and projects. That's kind of awesome to hear, man.
I don't think that these changes can. I think a lot of people will have to work on the problem for a serious solution to take hold that will benefit the entire community, the entire industry.
Well, let's talk a little bit, because I know people are going to be really interested to hear about, and you alluded to it in the very beginning when we started talking about the many, many challenges and hurdles that you've had to overcome. And I was curious, like, I know this gets more personal. I'm just kind of curious if you could talk about some of those, just so other people might be able to avoid some of them.
So I would say that the biggest challenge is this. If you think about it, most animation professionals, the experience they have when it comes to working on animation is the experience of working in large companies. And the mentality of that is very different from the mentality of trying to even work within an independent production, let alone organize an independent production. And the difference, of course, is that in a studio, in a big company environment, you are asked to play a very specialized role, and you don't need to know what the person before you does or what the person after you, and you don't need to worry about the overall management of the operation, and you don't need to worry about the code in the tools and whether things fit together technically, right? Mm-hmm. And if somebody wishes to accomplish something in the independent realm, then they should have the mindset of somebody who wants to learn at least the fundamental aspects of pretty much everything in the process. I underestimated that hugely at the beginning. I did see the problem, but my response to it was that I was simply going to partner with all these people that want to play all these other roles, the more technical roles, the more managerial roles, and I was just going to focus on the creative part, which was what my background was in. And this is, it doesn't mean that one should not partner with people, absolutely, but the point is that you're not going to be able to recruit the right people, and you're not going to be able to effectively collaborate with these people and communicate with them on an independent production unless you have a pretty good idea of what their tasks entail. Mm-hmm. So it's not. I'm sure you've came across it. You've come across it as well in the industry. Artists that they just want to draw or they just want to animate, and they're allergic to anything technical or anything managerial. And similar situations with somebody who is technical or somebody who is managerial. In an independent production, you gotta be open to learning every other aspect besides your area of specialization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that even just could be to help them understand how the pieces fit together. Not necessarily doing every aspect. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. It's not. Well, yes and no. I mean, you do have to do much more than the kind of specialization that most people are used to when they work at a studio. Mm-hmm. Um, uh, but yes, you also need to, because you're innovating so much more. You're not going to be able to innovate unless you connect the dots, and you're not going to be able to connect the dots unless you know what the dots are about.
Yeah, I know that's interesting. I'm always curious about like story, for instance. Story is, for me, it's like the learning about story and how the work that people are doing fits into this larger vision that is the story itself is an aspect that really needs to be developed, like no matter what level you're at. Because on independent projects, it's more important that it's not just the director's vision. I think the collaborative nature of a more independent animated project is that people can contribute at different levels, and have the ability to do that. Whereas at a larger studio, you might not have the ability to contribute at a higher level, but that's kind of one of the benefits of being on a more independent film.
Absolutely, yes. It's I'm hoping this is the culture on our production. I keep repeating over and over again that people should voice their ideas, and in this case, voicing their ideas means mostly typing it in a thread, because most of the communication is asynchronous, like in a social media type of situation, but which actually makes it even more necessary that you encourage people to always speak their mind, regardless of what their official role is. Like I remember, I remember there was this very interesting texturing note that was given by the person who's the sound supervisor on the film, and he so wanted to throw this idea, and in the way he typed his message, you could tell that he was so tortured about the fact that he's not a texture artist. He would say, I'm just a sound guy, but I just wanted to suggest that it wouldn't be a good idea to do this. And it was a brilliant idea, and we're like, yeah, absolutely. Right. So to have this open forum, and I mean, obviously at the end of the day, somebody's responsible to filter what would fit with the rest of the project and what wouldn't. But I think any organization should benefit from taking full advantage of all the brains they have in the group, right? But that's a bit more of a challenge when everybody's not in the same room. It takes extra reinforcement to encourage people to speak up, to make those contributions.
Now, do you have leads on like sequence leads for like surfacing, textures, animation, all that stuff? Like, do you have leads that help out with that, or do you kind of manage like everything?
We do have leads. We absolutely have leads, but all of them are, I think, of the exact same mindset. They're there to make the ultimate decision and take responsibility for it. But before that, they would love to have as many suggestions as possible. And a good idea is a good idea no matter where it comes from, even from the sound supervisor on textures, right? So yeah.
Do you have an ETA on them Greeks being completed, or you just don't even think like that anymore?
So funny you asked that. We obviously as soon as possible, but because the completion of the overall film is still such an ambitious goal, I've communicated to the team that we should first focus on finishing the first sequence, which we're very close to doing, and then the next milestone would be to put a trailer together, which is comprised by actual shots from the film. No unique shots, just for that trailer. Yeah. So if that happens, then we can show the trailer to the world and gauge the initial interest. It will be a lot of validation about many aspects of the production. So from that point, it will be much easier for me to make a projection about the completion of the overall film. But until then, we're just focused on those two milestones.
Well, good luck with that for sure, man. I can't wait to
Thank
be
you.
here. I'm championing for you on this side.
And I'm championing for Artella as well. I'm very interested every time somebody makes a great contribution towards that direction. Bobby, thank you. Thank you for starting it.
Our
Uh,
pleasure, man. It needs to happen, like you said. I mean,
yeah.
there's a huge need for this, and no matter what, it's not easy. But our hope is that we can make it easier, so that we can kind of help inspire that next generation of independent animated filmmakers, and VR movement, and like blending different styles of art together, and see what we get. Like I think there's so much potential, and I'm
Yes.
just excited to see where it goes too.
Yes. Let's figure out what opportunities may be there to make more progress together than going it alone.
Yep, you got it, man.
All right. Take care, Bobby.
Thanks, you too, man. We'll be in touch.